much, Lena. Alrighty, let me click the right button here. Do 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 do. Alrighty. So, yeah, I am first a little curious about y'all here today. So, if y'all are willing to pop in the chat, just a couple things for me. One, what's your exposure to Shakespeare? Have you never encountered it in your life? Have you seen a ton of it? You're like super, super Shakespeare. Oh, I see. Ooh, been in or worked on some Shakespeare. Awesome. I got some people who've know the name, but read it in school. That's about it. Seen it a lot. Awesome. I love to just kind of get a temperature check for who's where. Who's Shakespeare Company? Yay! Oh, I want to know which one now. Awesome. And then the other thing that I want to know is just what's your experience been? Oh, yay! Trans performer. Oh, we love seeing trans-friendly wardrobe supervisors and trans supervisors in wardrobe. That is going to be something I'm going to talk about today. And yeah, just I love it, love it, love it. Awesome. So I am very much solidly Shakespeare nerd, but it's okay if you're not. I'm not here to convert you, but I will be talking a lot about Shakespeare and how much fun I have with it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on in. So thanks again to Plume for hosting this. I'm super excited. And yeah, I've spent the past about 6 years playing trans and Aspec Shakespeare characters to the point where recently I had a director out in New Hampshire ask me to specifically play an asexual Romeo. So that's my gig for next summer, and I'm super excited about it. So I've been able to focus my whole career really on trans and aspec performance and representation in Shakespeare, and I wanted to share it with you all. So, oops, here we go. So, up here I have about four of the top questions that I get a lot from the general theater world and from audiences that I work with. Um, what's it like? Some reactions to some of the work that I do of I had some people that were like, hang on, wait, what do you mean you're doing trans Shakespeare? Or what do you mean Romeo can be ace? So I wanted to just kind of encourage anyone who is working in Shakespeare of hey, here's some more places that we are. And also just empower us in the trans and aspect communities in general by being like, look, we are as classic as Shakespeare because I have seen people's jaws drop when I talk about how much we can show up as the leads of Shakespeare, not just, servant two in the background who doesn't have a name and has maybe one line, but Romeo and Benedick and Juliet and Beatrice and Hamlet, the list goes on. So, little outline of how I today's going to run. I have a little bit about me. I'm going to be talking about why I know that queerness is part of the classical canon, and I'll break down specifically the Scottish play, otherwise known as Macbeth, as sort of a case study to show you where my brain goes and how I think about queer Shakespeare. We'll talk about those questions that I had on the previous slide, how those have led into me talking with some directors about how they make their rehearsal spaces more affirming. And then we're going to talk about some of the producing that I have gotten myself into, including, bankrolling a D&D show in a church with mostly Christians who were like, trans actors? Yeah, here's $20 an hour. So, whether you've never set foot in the theater before or you are a diehard Shakespeare fan, I wanted to just share some queer joy with you all this morning. So, here we go. So Lena did a wonderful job of, thank you again for introducing me, Lena. But yeah, so I've worked in as a professional actor almost exclusively in Shakespeare since I graduated high school. I was going to be an engineer and then walked into an audition room to learn what an audition was and walked out with a gig, and I haven't looked back. So I'm also a fight director and a teacher. I'm a playwright, author, poet. I've been producing since my senior year of high school, And I'm refusing to leave the Midwest and go to a theater city because I like my green space and I like being able to see the sky and have a garden and such. And yeah, my platform, Roguish Goblin Stories, is making NBs and Aspecs the main characters through Shakespeare comedy, TV, and fantasy shows. And I focus a lot on Aspec and trans theater practice, both in artistry and in like, company structure and like who's getting to lead and make decisions. So, how I know queerness is classical. I kind of break this down into three major points. One, Shakespeare traditionally kind of comes with the territory of gender fluidity because if you're not familiar with Shakespeare traditions, all of the casts of Shakespeare's day were just men because women we were outlawed from being on the stage for like purity of character, gender reasons. And that was sort of Elizabethan England. It was you had the binary and that was it. So on top of that, Shakespeare really likes using the plot device of specifically female characters cross-dressing as male characters for disguise. It shows up particularly in a lot of the comedies. And you also have characters like Boyette in Love's Labour's Lost, which is one of the comedies, where they cross between like separate binary gendered spaces, but nobody bats an eye or like it's just they're just in both men's and women's spaces and they're one of the few that gets to like flow between. Um, so it's baked right into the text of the play. And then secondly, Aspec and trans presence enlivens the story. You get to play with different kinds of stakes as an actor and as a cast. Um, Queerness belongs in Shakespeare because it's a reminder of how we've always been here. And the fact that I, as a non-binary aroace person, can play leads like Romeo, Mercutio, Macbeth, Hamlet, as trans aroace people without changing any of Shakespeare's text speaks volumes to how valid we are in classical spaces. And the stories focus on human struggles, and that includes us. So, and then thirdly, specifically like Aspec love being part of classical stories, I find some of the strongest and usually some of the healthiest relationships in Shakespeare to be friendships and relationships that are deep and dedicated and don't quite fit cleanly into allonormative definitions. Like in one of the comedies, As You Like It, the two female leads, Celia and Rosalind, are described as having a bond dearer than the bond of sisters. Or you have Benedick and Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, where they're both like, I don't really want to get married, thank you very much. Or you have Jakes in As You Like It as well. Jakes is the fool who has the famous All the World's a Stage speech. And he chooses to stay in the woods when everyone else returns to like the court and codified society. Or you have, Mercutio's connection to Romeo is sometimes, classified as a friendship. Sometimes they're like, oh, Mercutio's secretly in love with Romeo. I think they could also have a spec connection. And as I'm about to go do next summer, even Romeo's love for Juliet could be ace because it's bringing aspect love into Shakespeare is not about like just adding something top down that's unrelated. It's simply highlighting parts of the text that perhaps mainstream Shakespeare hasn't necessarily highlighted before and just showing off what's already in the text. So that's great, but it's not exactly what we see in mainstream Shakespeare all the time. So how do we go about like actually showing where we are in the canon? Always go to the text. Language, and especially in Shakespeare, like the language of the play is everything. And the reason you hear characters in Shakespeare say stuff like, here comes so and so, or it is very cold, which absolutely is apt for today. It's 19 degrees where I am, and I am blanketed up, very cold. Um, the reason you hear characters say things that feel obvious, like, oh, so and so is entering the stage, is because theater traditionally is an auditory medium. you would go to hear a play, not to see it. So that's why we have words like auditorium and audition and rehearsal, rehears all. They're all related to hearing what's spoken aloud, not necessarily paying attention to what you can see. So I look at what the characters in the text say about gender, about love, how they interact with social expectations and with each other. Because if we are focused on what people say, then we have to take what they say about themselves more than what we think about them based on how they're presenting. So, what do characters say about gender or love? Who gets mocked for breaking gender norms? Who gets away with it? What does that say about the world of the play? Like, is it a world where it's safe to be out? Or is it a world where, like, you don't really even have to come out because people just like, oh, okay, cool, and we move on. So I have linked here, I think it's 30 pages, a little ebook that I wrote a lot of really specifics where I dig into my thought process on like very specific characters so you can follow through in more detail. This is how I'm getting to point A and B. Again, I'm going to walk through a case study with one of them, but if you're curious about a lot of the other characters I have on this screen, this will be linked in the slide deck that I sent to Rye, so you should be able to get all of the links here in the slides. But I can also drop it here in the chat really quick. Do 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 do. Ta-da! There we go. That way, y'all can have it just in case. Um, doop-a-doop-a-doop. So, looking at the text, I always look for what I call my queer signposts. So, if a character is saying something very particular about gender or love, that's sort of my first, hey, this is a character to dig into a little more and see what's going on. So, if you recognize any of these, pop them in the chat because I'd love to hear, especially from some of my Shakespeare nerds. How many of these do you know? Um, so yeah, or even if you're just like, okay, I vaguely remember this because I read this play in school, but like, I think there was like some sort of disguise or something, like whatever you can think of. Because the nice thing about Shakespeare is like he is constantly questioning social norms, specifically stuff like gender. Someone found Lady M. Yeah, Unsex Me Here is Lady Macbeth at the oh boy, can I remember? It's Act One or Two. I think it's Act One of Macbeth. And someone got Twelfth Night. Yes, so the top center one is Viola from Twelfth Night. Um, but yeah, you get characters like Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, one of the comedies, who flat out is like, "Hey, I would rather hear my dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me." That is like big neon sign for my aroace brain to be like, ah, cool. This is someone who's definitely like could be in the ace spectrum. So yeah, we got some of the top row. The top left one is Macbeth from Macbeth. A little bit. Man's delights me. Yeah, man delights not me, no, nor woman neither. That is Hamlet when he's talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern about like, oh, I've lost all my mirth. I'm so sad when he's putting on the performance for the two of them. Um, he says man delights not me and they start laughing and he goes no nor woman neither and they're like well I didn't mean anything by it and he's like yeah sure. The bottom row, the center one, is also from Beatrice, from Much Ado About Nothing near the end of the play. And the bottom left one, or bottom left one, I teach people how to use their left and right hands with swordplay all the time, and I still don't know. The bottom right one, the worst fault you have is to be in love, is from Jake's, from As You Like It. So these are sort of some of the first lines that when I'm listening to a play and I hear that I go, okay, this is a character I want to go look at more and dig into where they fit in the trans and or aspec worlds. Which brings us to Macbeth. Gender is so big in Macbeth. Now, I am naming the play because I'm not in a theater. I know there's a superstition about the play being cursed and you're not supposed to say the title, but I'm not in a theater, and so it's okay. Um, and yeah, this play has so many different characters that are like talking about gender and fluiding up the lines between the boxes. Um, I encountered this is a weird one. For as much of a Shakespeare actor as I am, I did not run into Macbeth until the first time I worked on it as a 22-year-old. I somehow missed it completely until about 3 years ago. And I heard this play. I was working on it at the Hoosier Shakespeare Festival like 8 months after it came out as non-binary. So when I heard Macbeth say to Lady M, "I dare do all that may become a man, who dares do more is none," my ears perked up and I was like, "Wait, what?" And of course, we talked about in the chat, we have Lady M has her unsex me speech where she's like, "Hey, spirits, I don't think my husband is like mean enough to actually commit regicide and take the throne. So, since masculinity seems to be the only way for people to listen to you in this world, unsex me so I can get the job done." And fun little fact about specifically the term unsex, unsexed as far as gender goes, was applied to women who acted outside of the realm of femininity. So a lot of them aligned which with sort of butch and mass terms, but they didn't have to. But it was applied to women specifically who were not acting like a woman, whatever that society determined that to be, all the way up through Victorian era in Western society. So it's fascinating that Lady M is like, no, I'm choosing this. It's not an insult to me. I'm doing this so that I can get the job done. And of course, they have their own issues that make it a tragedy, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with their gender. Um, and then the one that really gets me with Mac is a signpost in the text that Macduff says. Now, Macduff is sort of the antagonist against Macbeth. Um, and he counters the typical like man up, don't cry argument with I must also feel my grief as a man. And he specifically links like emotional maturity and healthy grieving to their version of masculinity. So naturally, I hear all of these points in the text and go, okay, I want a production where Macbeth, Lady M, and Macduff are all trans and all coming at gender from like wildly different angles as they do in the play because I haven't seen it before. And having all three of them being trans in the same show opens up so many questions for the audience to think about gender and societal structures and like how strict gender boxes push forward parts of the tragedy like and also like what are the stakes of being outed like who's out to who knows you know if Lady M knows Mac is trans their whole stuff about like then you were a man if you did this is way more cruel. And then there's also like the fun, okay, contrasting Macduff's healthier relationship with gender to the Macbeth's relationships to their identities and like seeing where the tragedy shows up and how they're approaching different things. There's also some fun things with gender about the Weird Sisters, because Banquo is like, oh, you should be women, but your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so, which on one hand is probably a literal reference to the fact that like the actors playing the Weird Sisters were male identifying and possibly had beards. Um, but it also could be one of the Easter eggs that Shakespeare could have written into the text. Like, part of the superstition around Macbeth being cursed is that Shakespeare, in an attempt to sort of cater to King James I, who was his royal patron, so paying the bills, in order to sort of cater to him and have King James enjoy the play and fund the next one, the legend goes that Shakespeare wrote like actual spells and into the text of Macbeth. And so King James, being as obsessed as he was about the occult, very likely saw the gender ambiguity of the Weird sisters and went, aha, because he probably would have known that magic at the time was gendered, and specifically gender diverse people would be elevated as, being more respected or more powerful because they could access multiple genders of magic. So, like I said, I this play in particular really, really fascinates me because of how much gender discourse there is in the text. But I want to give you all some other resources, especially since we've got so many Shakespeare lovers in the house. I want to give you all some free stuff, some podcasts, and ways that I have found to like access Shakespeare. And for folks who are like, I've read it, but like, wanted to give you some stuff for just like figuring out what the heck all of the these and the thous and forsooths are about. So, firstly, just some resources that I use a lot as an actor and as a Shakespeare scholar. Um, this Shakespeare is Gay is sort of my overview. I absolutely love it. I'm a Rosa Wendt, who I've actually worked with out in New York, and her friend Haley. I think it's Haley Barak. Sorry, Haley. Um, so director and a scholar who work with Shakespeare all the time, and they're making a case for why every Shakespeare play in the canon is a little bit gay. So they do a nice overview summary of the play at the beginning of each episode. So I use that to just get sort of a general orientation of like, okay, this is the story, and also the bonus of here's why it's gay. But for something more in depth, I really, really highly recommend the ACMRS roundtable that I have linked here on the left. It is all about um, early modern literature and where asexuality shows up. And Dr. Ali O'Meara particularly focuses also on Aspec and trans identities and where they overlap. They've focused a lot on Hamlet. Um, and I also, Dr. Liza Blake is who I reference over and over again for A-spec identities in Much Ado About Nothing. And then Dr. Blake put together a whole bibliography of all their scholarship and their peer scholarship about asexuality in stuff like King Arthur and Shakespeare and other things. And then Chop Bard is where I go for like line by line. I am prepping for a show, or I really want to dig into what a show is about. And it's an actor who goes like line by line, says the script, and then goes, okay, so here's what it's talking about. And then I've got a couple others that are some short form videos and a book about some other gender fluid stuff in Victorian era Shakespeare theater, which was a fascinating read. See? And then, of course, I have to plug where to get some Shakespeare shows for free. Internet Archive has a ton. And again, because Shakespeare designed to be heard rather than read silently, I really, really, really encourage using Internet Archive or your local library, anywhere you can find this stuff for free, because it's been public domain for centuries. Like, it's fine. And you can find some really good quality companies on the Internet Archive and at your library. Like Stratford Festival up in Canada has some fantastic productions. Um, your London Globe, Royal Shakespeare Company, Donmar Warehouse, National Theatre, like they all have some really good ones. And I also like have some live theater that are like spins off of Shakespeare shows. So Gender Play is like it's a one-person show written by and performed by a non-binary person in Shakespeare, and it is just dance pop, bubble machines, confetti. There's a tarot reading. There's Shakespeare. It is such a queer joy party of a time. I don't know when it's going up on tour, but I do know that the play has been published. So at the very least, you can read the script. And yeah, that one's a really, really fun one. And that actually inspired um, my play that's right underneath that one plays many parts. where I'm going, okay, cool, here's some more stuff where Shakespeare can be trans. And then I'm also working on putting together some all trans Shakespeare productions through my company, Roguish Goblin Stories. I just gotta save up a little bit before I can get there. Because I refuse to pay everybody less than $20 an hour, because I've made it work so far. So I promised that I would go through some of those FAQs that was at the top of the talk. Here we go. I promise I didn't forget. Um, so yeah, I mean, those of you who are, I'm so glad that we have some trans costumers on the call because like costumes have been one of the places that like can be a little hit or miss for me. Um, just depending on like how versed the costumers, how experienced they are with working with trans people. Um, I've never found any costumers to be like outright a problem. Like most of the time, like I can bring something up and they're like, oh yeah, we can get you a different shirt that's a little more loose fitting. That's usually about all that I ask for. Um, but yeah, and there are still like a lot of the same sort of 101 and 102 conversations that I'm having, especially with directors and costumers, just because they're making more of the technical visual decisions and the staging decisions. Um, but again, I haven't really come across a lot of people who are opposed to anything. Like, um, some are a little more clueless, and like, I had a director in college who we were doing Shakespeare in Love, which is the pictures with me in the red vest on the right, where like the director called all of the non-binary people back for the same role, and it was the 12-year-old boy. And we were like, okay, I know some of us dress like middle school boys, um, but then when a couple of us went to her and were like, hey, we really think we would do better as some of these other roles that are a little bit bigger, she listened and was like, well, okay, well, you're gonna read for it just like everybody else. And we were like, yeah, that's and she ended up casting me as the Brad Pitt like matinee idol of Shakespeare's day, and she cast one of the other non-binary folks as Christopher Marlowe, one of the other supporting leads. So like, even though we had to like have a conversation, like she was willing and open, and then was like, yeah, actually, you are a good fit, and so she was willing to work with us. So despite some of the frustration of having the same conversations over and over again, I still wouldn't trade it for anything. And I get this one a lot, both from people inside the community, like the trans and Aspec communities, and outside. And I'm like, well, yes, there's room for us, of course. And like I said, like I booked Romeo because I made a case for him being an ace, and a director was like, yeah, let's do it. So part of the reason that I have seen success in being able to pitch myself as Shakespeare leads is because I'm always going back to the text. It's sort of, especially in Shakespeare and live theater, like the text is sort of the holy grail of like, if you can back your words up with the script, like most people are going to be like, okay, yeah, that works. Um, I also really like working with period plays and like and classical works specifically. A, because I get to do sword fights, as you can see by all of the pictures here, and because it's public domain, so we can be a little bit more scrappy with it because you don't have to get permission from a publisher to license the play or to cut the text down. So I can adjust the text to fit a different runtime or to highlight a certain character differently. Um, and again, I'm not, just like cherry picking Romeo down to like two lines to fit a headcanon. I'm just pointing to the lines in the text and being like, hey, Romeo's language is really flowery and visual, and he's talking a lot about how Juliet looks. Who's to say they're not actually experiencing aesthetic attraction? And conflating it with romantic attraction because I know that's what my high school ace brain did. I was like, "Oh, I just like how this person looks, therefore I must want to date them." And that was not the case. So because of this, I do like to think of my queerness as one of the skills I bring and one of the the advantages I have as an actor because most of the time when I'm pitching myself for Romeo and Mercutio and all these roles, I tend to get relatively the same reaction of like, huh? Oh, wait. That's so interesting. And so like funnily enough, my coming out process taught me how to be an actor because coming out and being non-binary taught me how to always lead with questions and specifically asking like, why? Does this rule have to be here? And is it this absolute? And so I bring those same questions to the text. And it's also comes down to just I feel like I'm gonna ping the gaydar regardless of how I look on stage, so like I might as well lean into it. And yes, I do sometimes get only cast as like kids and non-human characters, which can be fun. Like I do love getting to play the weird, wacky, chaos goblin. But like I also don't want to further the tropes of like trans people and aspec people only being non-humans. So that is part of why I do Shakespeare, and it's also part of why I like produce my own things, which is why I stay in the Midwest where the market isn't as saturated. I have more opportunity to work with actors and to draw audiences because there's not as much theater going on in the middle of Indiana. Um, and so, I feel like I have a better niche because it's open here and I'm able to work with actors who aren't getting seen in bigger markets and I'm able to create work for them that's paying them really well. And it's really fun to say I run a theater company where good old Indiana Christians are bankrolling trans theater to the tune of paying trans artists $20 an hour to do Dungeons and Dragons themed shows in a church. Because it's such a fun way to like buck the whole red state flyover country myth and show that like no, there are so many trans allies even in pockets of like rural supposedly conservative states. And this is what opened up I opened up talking with some directors who reached out to me as I started talking about being ace and being trans and they were like, yeah, okay. So what have you seen work? What have you seen fail? And what have you seen that's just completely missing that would help you move through theater spaces more easily? Um, all because I was just loud about it. So it's also really encouraging to see so many directors outside of major cities who are actively looking for ways to better support the trans community and the ace community in theater. So also, that's why I started producing more because I realized looking back as I was creating this talk that I'm like, yeah, I've been doing my own plays since high school and I just haven't like I've been refusing to call myself a producer, but that's really what I am. So you know, the my sort of favorite one that I've done so far was I did a show that I had written called Boyish that was inspired by D&D, sort of magic, exploding angels, traveling friends on an adventure. And my dad's church was like, you can use the space for free. And then the pickleball church ladies heard what we were doing and they were like, "Can we print posters? Can we do Oh, you have a fundraiser. Oh my gosh, can we donate? Can I share the fundraiser?" And we were like, "Well, yeah, sure. What?" And I had several of the folks in that group were trans and had been burned by the church. And it was so fun watching their faces go from like, I don't know if I'm going to be safe here to what do you mean the church ladies are paying us $20 an hour? And we were able to keep the show free, so all of the college students were able to come see the show without having to pay an arm and a leg to come see it. So I'm working on digging more into producing because that has really, really, really worked. And I mean, it is the biggest driver of like the impact that I'm seeing, like the look on families' faces when I'm like, yeah, you can bring all six people and you aren't having to pay, $300 to come see the show. The look on, the actors' faces when I'm like, I can pay you $20 an hour. And getting to see people in the audience react and people in the cast when we're going through the story and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is a part of myself that I've never seen on stage before." And it's, "Oh my gosh, I'm not alone." Like that's my favorite. And I had a student, I was a traveling actor teacher for my first year out of school, and this kid came up to me. I was wearing my pronoun pin on my shoulder, and they were like, "Hey, I saw your pin, and I just wanted to let you know that because of you, I know I'm gonna be okay." And I'm like, that is the sum of why I do theater in a sentence. So yeah, I'm really digging into making my production company and my theater company like the focus of my career because, I might as well make a bunch of theater and movies and TV shows about us because I don't see a streaming platform that's dedicated to us anywhere else. So like, I'm really excited about some of the stuff that I'm cooking up, and I wanted to give you some sneak peeks. So uh, one of them is I'm also very much a fantasy adventure nerd. I grew up on Lord of the Rings. I love being in a sword fight. I have my shield here, but my swords are unfortunately not on the same wall. So I'm doing some fantasy shows that are having trans and aspec leads just as sort of a default. And I'm also doing some comedy Shakespeare themed TV shows, including the all trans Shakespeare shows, and doing one that I'm going to stick half Shakespeare actors and half comedians in a Shakespeare cast together, and they're fighting for who wins. And so if the comedic actors make the dramatic actors break, they get points. And if the dramatic actors make it to the end of an act without breaking, the dramatic team gets points. I'm sure it's going to be absolute chaos, but I'm so excited for the insanity. And I also write books. So I have published some poetry. I have published the ebook of Desert Phoenixes, which follows four trans and aspec people on sort of a Star Wars kind of adventure where they realize the war that they were fighting isn't what they were told it was. So I have a link for that in the swag bag that went out for PlumeCon. Very thankful for them letting me sort of double dip and put something in the bag. And I'm also working on figuring out how to make like special editions of my books, um, handmade. Because I actually my introduction to Plume was taking Lena's zine class, and I loved it so much that I was like, I'm gonna make all of my books from scratch. That is turning out to be a lot of work, so I'm like, okay, it might just be special editions, but I still do want to hand make and hand bind some of the books and just make them really special because books are really cool gifts. And then I'm also working on my theater company. So the one of the goals that I have with Blanket Fort is that we can live stream as much of it as possible. So we're working on some radio plays that we can just put up on YouTube, and then also doing some live streams of some of our shows for our veterans, for our queer communities, for single moms. Um, I'm really excited. So currently fundraising for that as well because I can't just do one thing at once. So yeah, I if you want to stay in touch with all of the chaos that I get myself into, I do have an email list that goes out once a month. Again, I'll drop the link in the chat. And then if you want to see the behind the scenes of how a streaming platform gets built from the ground up, we're only 3 months old at Roguish Goblin Stories, and I'm working on getting some podcasts and stuff out about trans identities in Shakespeare and ice identities in Shakespeare, um, to help get it going and get some regular episodes out and running. So yeah, I'm 5 minutes early. I must have talked fast, so I'm ready for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Max. And I just love the full circle moment of me learning from you today and us first connecting when roles were reversed in the zine workshop. That just warms my heart. And I think it's an example of this like reciprocal community building in action. I'll just say I mentioned this in the chat, but for any of y'all who want to check out that workshop, you can find the recording on Prism if you're a Plume member. But we have one question in the Q&A box here. I also saw it show up in the chat, but it's also in the Q&A box. Could you give any advice on getting into acting theater, like as a trans person and as an adult? Like,
Ooh, yeah, yeah. Part of what my success has come from, and again, I different markets are going to function a little differently. Like if you're in a big city, you might have a better chance finding a company that is like queer aligned. Like I know that, like Cleveland and Chicago and Indy have theater companies that are more focused on like hiring and working with trans actors. But even if you don't, like most of the companies that I've worked with have just been like run-of-the-mill Shakespeare festivals. Um, if you're if you have a date, if you're not looking to like necessarily get paid right out the gate, community theater is a fantastic way to get started. It's a great way to build your resume so that as you're auditioning then for professional theaters, they can be like, oh, okay, so you've done, Clue and Annie and what have you. I also really like there's a lot of small Shakespeare companies that will provide housing if you're from out of town. So like Hoosier Shakespeare Festival and stuff. The I'll put it in the chat. The Shakespeare, oh gosh, STA, Shakespeare Theater, what's the A stand for? Association, I think. I can spell. Has a list of not every Shakespeare festival in the country, but a lot of them. And so that's a great place to see what companies are near you. And if there's one that's close by and you can go, if they're not free, go find out if you can usher. Ushering is a great way to A, see the shows for free, see if like the vibe of the company is something that you really kind of click with. Because sometimes, the group is just not going to be for you and you find somewhere else. But ushering, you get to see the show for free. You get your name in front of the staff at the theater. And so, like, you can start making a really good impression as an usher, and you can sit and chat, as people are between checking people in. And you can start asking questions about, like, when are your auditions? And you can start doing some of that networking just by ushering and going and seeing shows. Plus, you get a free show out of the evening.
awesome. Thanks, Bex. We got a couple more questions that came in.
Yeah.
This one, so how much of your success do you prescribe to luck and how much is hard work? Uh, Person says, I'm a creative who finds it very difficult to break through despite how many hours I put into my craft.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Feel you there. Um, I think my relationship to luck is interesting because I think some of my hard work creates some of my luck. I think some of it is just sort of factors outside of my control of I happen to find out that the first company that I worked with, Hoosier Shakespeare Festival, it was a series of like, oh, it happens to be performing across the street from my house and we happened to not have anything, so we went to the show and then the actors happened to go to the coffee shop where I was working the next day, and I happened to be able to take my break to talk to them and find out that I was old enough to audition. Um, and things like, you know, I didn't know at the time that, okay, one of the reasons that they hired me was because I was from a community that they were trying to grow their audience in. So they were like, you can bring all of your friends to the show. And so I was a stronger investment. I didn't know that going in. Um, some of it has just been I got picky. I mean, I when I started acting, I would take anything. Like it didn't matter. And very quickly I only auditioned for things that paid me. It has meant that I do a lot fewer shows. It also has meant that I'm at least being able to pay my bills when I'm driving 8 hours to do a show. So I would say that like probably 60-40. Like most of it has been, I think, my hard work and learning where not just my actual artistic craft makes me a good investment, but also like what other factors, like, okay, yes, I know I'm a good actor, but also I know I'm a fight director. That is, those two combined makes me a stronger, a better hire. If I'm from a certain area that I know the theater company's trying to break into, hey, I can reach out to XYZ. So it's some of my hard work has also been figuring out what factors around my craft can help support my craft. If I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, Bex, would you say also that maybe part of it is with the luck component? Part of it might be like practicing recognizing when luck shows up so you
Yes.
know it when you see it, and also letting yourself act on it, which can be scary because sometimes there's an opportunity that shows itself, but you're nervous or you don't want to talk about yourself or you don't want to talk about your work. And if you can break through that hurdle, then
Yes.
that luck can transform into an opportunity for hard work to generate more luck, etc.
Yeah, and also learning that like capitalizing on that opportunity is not taking it away from someone else. You're not being a burden, you're not taking up too much space by seeing an opportunity and going for it, or by asking for an opportunity that hasn't come to you yet.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So we got a couple more questions. Love all of these. So a question about recommendations. So a friend asks, if I got into Shakespeare, do you have any recommendations for what play I should read over first?
Ooh. Um, I mean, my favorite one for just like general enjoyment is Much Ado About Nothing. Um, as far as like reading over ones and like looking at them for monologues, because when you're auditioning for Shakespeare, they're likely going to ask for two contrasting monologues, which typically means you want a comedic one and a dramatic one. Um, or like you want to make your characters different enough that you can show that you can play more than one kind of character. Um, for audition pieces, I really like pulling dramatic monologues from the histories. Richard II has some particularly dramatic ones. Um, I also, if you're looking to audition for female characters in Shakespeare, which like canon female characters, there aren't many. Uh, but Constance from King John. King John is one of my favorite histories. Has a really, really gut-wrenching dramatic monologue about grief. So yeah, I like my biggest advice as you're looking to audition is um, if the show is really popular and you're seeing it performed a lot, so Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, I would even say Caesar. Um, Probably don't do a monologue from those because those are ones that a lot of people do monologues from Midsummer. Like, I'm a shoe-in for Puck. I never do a Puck monologue unless the theater asks for it. Because, one, the directors are probably going to be bored hearing the 50th Puck they've heard that day. And two, I know that anybody who talks with me for 5 minutes is gonna see Puck. So I go, I'm gonna give you something from Love's Labor's Lost, is one of the comedies that isn't done as much. Or there's some comedic monologues if you want to pull like Falstaff from one of the histories from King Henry IV. So I would look at some of the plays, some of the histories, and some of the lesser done comedies for your audition pieces.
Awesome. And a personal question, how did you get into fight directing?
Ooh, so I wanted to be a Jedi when I was 7, and so my parents were like, "Well, karate classes." So, I did Ryukyu Kempo martial arts for about 12 years, on and off as we moved and everything, because I'm a pastor's kid, so that happened fairly regularly. Um, and then when I face planted accidentally into the Hoosier Shakespeare Festival, Darth Maul is my favorite. So just saw the chat. Um, Darth Maul actually is the reason I wanted to start karate classes. Um, when I started at the Hoosier Shakespeare Festival, we were doing repertory shows. So you're doing your multiple shows at once. And we were doing a comedy as you like it, and we were doing Othello, one of the tragedies. And I was in the background of a couple of the group sword fights. And It was really fun. And so the fight director pulled me aside and gave me extra coaching. And then I asked the group and was like, hey, is there like a way to keep training in this? And so the group, then one of the actors who went on to, he's out in New York working with like Andre de Shields, and he's doing awesome, forwarded me to Dueling Arts International, which is one of the two big industry organizations. You have Society of American Fight Directors, SAFD, and you have Dueling Arts. Um, I prefer Dueling Arts' teaching structure to SAFD's. And that ended up being really helpful for me going into college because I then worked with a director who didn't think a fight director was necessary, and I now have a chronic shoulder injury because of it. So it was the combination of, thankfully, I had the fun to hook me into it first, and then I had the safety element come behind to further dig me into like, okay, I don't just want to be an actor combatant. I want to be a fight director and a teacher so that I can help keep people safe in the future.
I love that. We have a similar martial arts origin story, except I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. Uh,
Yeah.
Donatello, and there's a parallel with Darth Maul there, you know.
Mm-hmm. I
Connection.
got the bow.
Yes. So y'all, we are just coming up on the end here. So I'm gonna share a couple of slides in closing um to just recap a couple of things. So here we go. So I mentioned earlier our Plume social media platform Prism, which many of you are already members of. You already join us there, hang out there. If you're not, you can come check it out. So this is where you can find trans support groups, weekly hangouts, educational workshops, live events, topic-focused discussion spaces, and a trans experience resource library, along with exclusive discounts to trans supportive brands. And if you go to getplume.co/community, you can get 6 months of free Prism with the code PlumeCon. So come check it out. You can check out that zine workshop I mentioned earlier. You can come hang out with me during the neurodivergent or the 40 plus peer support group, and also check out all sorts of other stuff. We have other wonderful things coming up today. This is just day one of three. And our next event coming up in just a couple of minutes. Speaking of our peer support groups, you can go meet some of our facilitators. You can go meet Cameron and Eliza during our lunchtime meet and greet. That starts in about a minute and a half. So grab your lunch and come get to know some more of our peer support specialists and learn some more about our spaces. I'm going to be over on Prism in the attendee lounge with Bex for another 30 minutes. If you want to stop by and keep the conversation going for any additional questions, thoughts, or just, come chit chat. So with that, let's all show some appreciation to our wonderful speaker, Bex. I think this was fascinating, informative, inspiring. I learned a lot, and it makes me want to do more Shakespeare. So I think I caught the bug a little bit. So nice work, friend. And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the rest of the sessions. The Shakes bug. Love it. Thank you, Bax.
Thank you so much.